Hello and welcome to Your Health Matters, Let's Talk. My name is Cleopatra. Your Health Matters is a program that discusses priority health issues affecting us in our daily lives. On this episode, we are looking at stunting or stunted growth, when a child is not growing to its potential.
When antenatal mothers come to the health center, most of the times we take an opportunity also to talk about maternal nutrition. And one of the interesting things that have come out is when you ask them about malnutrition, yes, most of the mothers are familiar with kwashiorkor or marasmus, where they are able to see some children in the community being wasted, being miserable, the hair has changed color. And when you talk about stunting, it's something really that most of our mothers do not really understand, and they've not yet appreciated that stunting is also a type of malnutrition.
Last mwana azapezeka na malnutrition. Hai, tiazi la malnutrition. Ni matendo ya bwanje. Basi mai. Mkalipo wanapo mwana wa malnutrition. Malnutrition. Kuli malnutrition yosi yana. Tima itana tumatenda ya njera. Sima mene? Kuli malnutrition ya jewe yondelela, kuli malnutrition yovimba, kuli malnutrition yofupika. Muna yanzelako? Kufupika.
Have you ever heard about malnutrition?
Yes.
Yes. Do you know any signs of malnutrition?
Yes, I know some of them.
Like which ones?
Maybe like in a child,
Yes.
the baby will be looking pale, and then the stomach will be looking swollen. Yes, and the baby won't look healthy.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, actually there are different types of malnutrition, just as you've come out. Yes, some will present as if they've got a distended abdomen. Yes, others will be swollen. Others, they will look very small. But of late now in Zambia, we are getting concerned because we know for sure that even shortness, the one people are calling that stunting, is also a type of malnutrition. And when we look at our Zambian scenario now, we've discovered that a lot of our babies are shorter than they are supposed to be. So that is one reason now why we are talking a lot about nutrition during pregnancy, because we know for sure that we can prevent that type of malnutrition from the time the mother becomes pregnant up to the time when the child is 2 years old.
Malnutrition ya amabwera munjira yosiyana siyena. Ayambira kumwana akali mumala. Tili bonse so muzimayi pajangata na mimba afunika kudye vabwino voyenera mutupi so that mwana uja amene ali mumala apeze chani vomukulisa bwino ayi ngati sakudya bwino mwana akabado azankhala na malnutrition malnutrition amene itanati kufupika.
When you look at this picture, what are you able to see?
On this one, there is bread, there is maize, bananas. Yes.
Do you think that the food that we eat also matters to the baby that we are carrying?
Yeah, because they've told us that. They said what we eat is what the baby eats.
Okay. All these foods are very important, the ones we are saying bodybuilding foods, because they'll help you maintain your body strong, and they'll help the baby that will be born to grow and be strong.
When mothers come here, they bring their babies for weigh. Before we weigh their children, we give them health education. It's very important for mothers to breastfeed their babies exclusively. Exclusive breastfeeding protects their babies from infectious diseases like diarrhea. Breast milk contains all the nutrients that are required by the baby. We also encourage mothers to start complementary feeding at the age of 6 months, because at the age of 6 months, breast milk alone is not enough. That's why it's very important for them to start giving other foods that are locally available. And the most important thing is for them to know how to prepare these foods and how to mix them.
So we've taken opportunity of the first 1,000 most critical days in every person's life to tackle the stuntedness, because we've realized that these children usually they don't get sick, but in the long life they have very bad consequences. And some of those consequences we are talking about are consequences like having a low immunity system because they did not grow well, And the other thing that we've observed is that those children who are stunted, usually you find that their performance in class, generally in education, is low. And later in life, you find that their economic productivity also is affected.
Today, when I went to the clinic for antenatal visit, we learned something new that I didn't know. It was about stuntedness, and this is the other form of malnutrition that comes when you, a mother, while you are still pregnant, you're not eating balanced diet. Your child will have a problem in your stomach, and yet when you deliver, that child will have that problem of stuntedness. The child will not be growing to the age. Maybe the child is 2 years, and then the baby is looking like one who is 2 months old, which is not okay. That is a sign of stuntedness. It is malnutrition.
So ife tiyentigwirizane pamozi tiona ti ivuto ya malnutrition yakufupika ichite chani isile ayi tilivonse.
My guests on the program are from the National Food and Nutrition Commission. Mr. Fred Mubanga is the head of Public Health and Community Nutrition, and Mrs. Justina Mlengabesa is the head of Nutrition Education and Communication. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So I'll start with you, Mr. Mubanga. What is stunting and what causes stunting?
Stunting is a form of malnutrition in which the baby's growth is not adequate, and this is a condition whereby at a certain age you expected the baby to be at a certain height. Now, because of long-term inadequacy of food, the growth is affected or is slowed down, and this usually starts from pregnancy up to 2 years of age of the baby's life. So it's during this period that stunting usually starts.
So is lack of food the main cause of stunting?
If we start from pregnancy, if the mother, for example, is malnourished, then it means that the child already is not, or the growing baby is not receiving adequate food. So as such, stunting also starts during pregnancy. And when the child is born, again, if at all the baby is not properly fed, stunting continues. Or there are infections that may affect the growth of the baby, such as in the situation of HIV AIDS, TB, or other conditions that like diarrhea also. These conditions can also affect the growth, such that by 2 years, if it's not corrected, then the child becomes permanently stunted.
How common is this problem of stunting in Zambia, Mrs. Besa?
Stunting, or this form of malnutrition, unfortunately, is very, very common in Zambia. As we speak today, we have about 1 in every 2 children, or 45% of our children under the age of 5, who are malnourished with this kind of malnutrition.
So how do I know that my child is stunted? What are some of the symptoms?
You cannot see visibly and convince that the child is stunted. For example, there are those that are generally short. Maybe the shortness is from the parents, so that's genetic. But the stunting which arises from inadequate food, usually we tend to look at the height and the age, and we also at times look at weight as well. So you find that if at all the weight is not adequate and the growth is slow, there you can say, of course, the child is stunted. But we normally, in the health center or maybe other facilities, we tend to measure the height, and then we also compare it with the age, and then we look at our reference standards. Reference standards, we mean in a normal situation, for example, a 5-month child is supposed to be at a certain height.
We have different genetic makeup. Some are tall, some are short. So how can we tell for sure that this child is stunted or this child has got this problem?
we have to do the assessments in the health facility. We take the height and we look at we also determine the age and then compare with the reference standard. That's how we get to know that that child is stunted or not. Of course, a certain percentage is there genetically, that somebody, because the parents are shorter and genetically they are there, but generally it's the environmental factors that actually influence whether the child can become stunted or not. And this by, I mean, is there adequate food? Is the environment where they are staying, is it healthy?
So can anything be done to prevent stunting?
Yes, of course. Actually, stunting can come as early as when that child is a fetus in the mother's womb. So therefore, the nutrition of the mother becomes very paramount to ensure that you have a healthy outcome in terms of pregnancy, a healthy child as a starting point. So that's one way to already begin to prevent. When the child is born, the kind of food that is going to be given to this child is also very, very important. They will contribute to preventing malnutrition. Infection prevention, very, very important. Because even if you give very good food to this child, if the environment in which they are living in is not up to date, look at safe water, for instance. Without safe water, it means even if I give very good food, the child will be bound to get infections, diarrheal infections. And the more diarrheal diseases the child gets, the most likely that they'll be malnourished.
Mm-hmm. So what is the real link between infections and stunting?
The real link is that when you are sick, the body would need to fight the infection. And if at all the person or the baby is malnourished already, it means the ability to fight that infection is very, very minimal. As such, the infection continues hammering and the growth is also affected. So really, we call it infection nutrition cycle.
Are our foods really adequate to prevent stunting in Zambia?
The foods we have in Zambia?
The foods that we have in Zambia.
Oh yes, we're so blessed as a country that we have so much of foods that's locally available that can help to prevent stunting. Even for the children, the age group we are talking about, less than 2 years, we have a lot of locally available foodstuffs that would like to promote, that are being promoted rather, for feeding this child. After 6 months, when we are saying the child is ready to start eating the foods, there's so much, the porridges, the groundnuts, the cowpeas, there's so much that is locally available. Of course, we do have a few households that are very, very vulnerable and they need support. Sometimes we've seen situation, a child that is less than 2 years is being given maheo instead of, how much does maheo cost, for instance? Why don't you instead buy a packet of milk? You can buy an egg, it's things like that. So really, it's the feeding habits, but generally, the food is available.
Yeah. As a commission, Mrs. Besa, do you have any long-term measures to deal with stunting?
We have what we have now at the moment as a multi-sectoral response to malnutrition. This is a program that has just been launched in the country where we are looking at, as Food and Nutrition Commission, we are coordinating various sectors because we know when you talk about food availability, the Ministry of Agriculture is very central. That is the key ministry responsible for ensuring that food is available in the country. How do people access this food? We do have the Ministry of Local Government. You just heard about issues of infections and things like that. That is anchored under the Ministry of Local Government and Housing. So we do have Ministry of Education. We have children here. We have children being able to learn and things like that. We do acknowledge that some households are very vulnerable and they need some kind of support to ensure that these children are not stunted. And therefore, the Ministry of Community Development, Mother and Child, becomes a very key player in this matter. Then we do have, of course, the Ministry of Health, which has been on the receiving end for a long time. A child is malnourished, it's Ministry of Health. So now we have all these 5 key sectors that we are bringing together. Each one of them has a critical role to play to ensure that we reduce these levels of stunting. By the way, our level of ambition is that in the next 3 years, we should reduce the levels of stunting by 30%. We do have a program now which we're calling 1,000 Most Critical Days program. The first 270 days or 9 months when a woman is pregnant. Then we have 365 days, the first year of a child's life. Then we have the other 365 days, the second year of life. So when you add up, this gives you the first 1,000 Most Critical Days program. And we do have actions that are being proposed in the 1,000-day program by each of these sectors that I've talked about. So each of these is able to do their part. I can assure you, we'll be smiling as Zambia in the next 3 to 5 years because we'll have reduced our levels of stunting.
Thank you so much. It is now time for questions from the audience. Audience, are you ready with the questions?
Yes.
Let's have the lady in front here, please.
Mrs. Wessa, you spoke about quality of food that we give our children. Now, on the market today, we have a lot of processed foods and fast foods, such as crisps and corn puffs. As a mother, I have to ask, are these foods good for our children?
Our concern are children less than 24 months. Those are children under 2 years. And those children are eating for growth, not for leisure like you and I, we are grown. Talking about processed foods, well, there are some processed foods that can be accessed for infants, for children, but talking about jiggies and things like that, well, I'm not sure that is food for growth for a child that is under 2 years or indeed under 5 years. That is really not food that is recommended for children of that age group because they are not providing much in terms of the nutrient that that child requires.
The next question.
If a mother is HIV positive, can she really breastfeed or give alternative feeds? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, HIV positive mother can breastfeed. I think we have now guidelines that all the health workers that interact with HIV positive mothers, we advise them that they can successfully breastfeed like their colleagues who are not HIV positive, but on condition that they are on treatment. They are encouraged to continue or to do exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months and then continue actually up to even 12 months.
Maybe just to add, I know you asked about can they breastfeed because I'm sure you've learned that the virus can still be passed through breast milk. So what we are saying is the first 6 months, I think there are certain issues that when a woman is counseled at the health center, in terms of, they'll look at issues of the breast conditions, for instance, because those are some of the roots, depending on how the breasts are, whether they have sore nipples and things like that. Does the child have thrush? All those factors are important in the prevention, so they can still successfully breastfeed even with HIV.
The gentleman.
Thank you. My question goes to both panelists. I'm a bit concerned. You mentioned that stunting affects the intellect of a person, but then I have quite a number of friends who are short. And then my question is, is our intellect affected by their shortness? And, are they stunted, all of them? Thank you.
Unless if you are telling me that your friends who are short, their performance is bad and so forth, then we'll conclude that definitely they were subjected to stunting.
Yes, because actually his question is, are all his friends who are short, are they stunted? But then I think you ask a very valid question. Are all your friends who are short down? Which is not the case, isn't it? Is that what you want to say? Could you just maybe elaborate on that?
When you are stunted, actually when you grow into an adult, your performance is not satisfactory or is not to the full potential that would have been if you were not stunted. So we normally say for every 1% increase in stunting, it has an effect on adulthood in terms of reducing your performance.
Next question, please. The lady across. Thank you.
My question is directed to Mrs. Bessa. I've come across some pregnant women who crave and eat soil. Does that have any nutritional value for both the mother and the unborn child, and does it have any side effects? Thank you.
First and foremost, this is something that is discouraged. So in terms of nutritional value, I'm not sure there's any value added to eating. It's a craving. You know, when women are pregnant, we crave for so many things. So apparently, soil seems to be one of the things that keeps coming up as a craving for women, but no value in terms of nutrition. And we don't know what kind of soils you are picking up, and in the process, you are probably picking up eggs of worms, and probably this is why we actually do have a program for pregnant women to be dewormed.
Let's get the next question. The gentleman in front here.
Thank you very much. We have heard that mothers who fall pregnant and yet they're still breastfeeding should continue breastfeeding. Do you think that is safe for the child that's breastfeeding? Thank you.
Very safe. It is possible that you fall pregnant and you continue breastfeeding. In fact, when the child is very small, it's actually advisable that you continue breastfeeding until maybe, I'm not sure whether, maybe just for the comfort of the mother, maybe within the last month of delivery. But otherwise, it's very safe. We've heard a lot of myths, but I would like to assure everyone that it is very, very safe. Actually, there's no problem.
Yeah, what is important is actually to ensure that you have adequate food, you have adequate fluids, so that the mother yourself, you are well nourished to support the pregnancy as well as the breastfeeding. Yeah.
I want to find out if there are any foods that mothers can give to their children to prevent stunting.
Well, we don't have special food, but like we have said, after 6 months, the child is ready to start taking in the foods. So all we are saying is it should be a varied diet, meaning a balanced diet in another way, a diet that constitutes the protein, the vegetable related, and the energy related. So that combination is very, very important to ensure that the child has adequate nutrition.
Thank you very much. Next question. There's a gentleman here.
Well, thank you. My question is, some mothers believe that children under the age of 6 months who tend to cry a lot are actually as a result of probably inadequate food. How true is that theory?
When a child cries, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not having enough breast milk. Children who are small, their language of communication is mainly crying. They are hot, they will cry. Their nappies are wet, they will cry. So it doesn't automatically mean because the child keeps crying, then they are not having adequate nutrition breast milk. The important thing I want to say to determine whether the child is not growing well or not is when you take the child to the under 5 clinic every month, we have a children's card. Within there, it should be able to determine the growth curve of the child. If the growth curve keeps going up, it means the child is growing well. So why do you want to rush and make conclusions that the milk is not enough? There are so many reasons. That's a language of communication mainly for the child.
What are some of the cultural barriers that you face as you deal with this problem of stunting?
Well, one of the barriers that probably of late have come to notice is that you find that some mothers, when we are doing, for example, some surveys here and there, they don't want their children to be, measured while lying, because they think as if you are measuring the coffin. So they tend to be, somehow uncomfortable over that. But normally, this is why, what we do is when we are doing this kind of thing, we normally do what we call a consent. We advise and we counsel and explain the importance. And usually for the newborn babies, we don't even take the measurements because it's difficult. Normally, we start looking at the measures of where we look at height and the age. Normally, we start after 6 months, not immediately when the baby is born. What we weigh mainly is we take the weight to know whether the baby is underweight or is low birth weight, because again, if the baby is low birth weight, then there's a potential that the child can become stunted.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mbanga and Mrs. Besa, for making an appearance on Your Health Matters Let's Talk. And audience, thank you so much for your questions. We really appreciate and value your contributions, so we'd love you to get in touch with us. Get to the Facebook page of the Ministry of Health. That's www.facebook.com/MOH Zambia. Until next month at the same time, this is Your Health Matters. Let's talk.
Whether you're a student or a mother, a lawyer or a banker, your health matters.
This program is brought to you by the Ministry of Health with support from the United States Agency for International Development and its Communication Support for Health project.